Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate you guys coming through. We are gathered here today. No, I'm playing. So I did have a pretty well-known person on my channel make a special request. So I'm going to try to not butcher her name because it is a little bit long. Atousa Pourkashiyan. I believe that's how you say it. I heard the commentator saying Atousa. I don't really know if that's it or not. It looks like Atousa to me. But anyways, their round 8 game between her and Carissa Yip. As you guys probably know, Carissa Yip did win the U.S. Women's Chess Championship of 2023. But this is one of their games, one of her games that she did play. So I went ahead and went back a little bit. So all of my people coming from the Philippines, I will say mabuhay to you. Magandang, it is actually morning, so magandang umaga. Maraming salamat po sa nanonood ng aking mga video. I appreciate you guys very much. Anybody who is coming up from Iran, I will say salam and khayli mamnoon. I appreciate you guys. Merci for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. But if you guys are ready, man, let's take a look, see what we got for this game, homie. So we got the movie E4. Bobby Fischer said best by test. I just did a video on him yesterday, and I will be doing one tomorrow. We got E5, classical way. You know, basically Black is saying, I want everything you want, bro. We got knight to F3, knight to C6. You guys see this all the time. This is by far the most common way to play. We got bishop to B5, A6. So we do have the Ruy López, also known as the Spanish game, Morphy variation. Bishop drops back to A4, and this is the Columbus variation of that. Of course, you also have the ability to go bishop takes here, and then we have the exchange variation, but we do not have that. We got bishop to A4. Knight comes to F6, and we have the move D3. Basically, white is just saying that they want to just keep everything as solid as possible. They don't want to go for any of the tactic type stuff. They just want to play as solidly as possible, like I said. What you do have, literally like 11 times more than what you just saw D3, is the move castles. And then we kind of have like a Berlin idea of, you know, knight takes E4, doesn't drop your pawn because you have rook to E1 and you're attacking, you know, this king in the center of the board. So you almost always would see bishop to E7 just covering and then rook to E1. And you also get to push D4 in one go after C3 and then D4, stuff like that. But like I said, we did see the move D3, just keeping everything solid. Definitely nothing wrong with it. We do see the move D6. We got C3. And then we do see bishop to D7. And because of the way that the players are kind of going, choosing the less popular moves, we are down to just 121 games in a database at this point. And bishop to B3 actually steps out of theory for a second, but we pop back in. Bishop to B3 might look kind of strange to you guys because you're like, wait a minute, didn't I go C3 to like specifically give my bishop a chance to just drop back to C2 immediately in one move? Well, I will come back to this point and reference this situation. We do have bishop, you know, attacking. Come on, bro. We do have bishop attacking F7 right now. And we see the move by black H6. We do not want knight coming to G5 because it is really, really hard to protect this F7 square. So that is one of the reasons. But there's a deeper reason, you know, as to why bishop to B3 was played instead of bishop to C2. But we'll get back to that in a second. We got knight B to D2. We got the move G6. Knight going down to F1. Very common maneuver. Basically getting to G3 with the knight so that we can make sure that E4 is very heavily protected. We got bishop to G7. Knight comes up to G3. We see castles by black, castles by white. And we actually see the novelty of the game, which is the move B5. So this is the first time this position has been seen with the kind of move order that we had. It's very common ideas. Anybody who plays E4, E5, you know that, you know, A6 and B5 comes. This is also something that you see in Sicilians coming as white. But of course, you know, this knight is not blocking the C-pawn and the C-pawn is generally gone. But going to what we had, like I said, we did see B5. Now, one thing I did want to mention is the fact that we have seen this exact position before in 1974. The late, great Arthur Bisguier, known as the Dean of American Chess, did go knight to A5, and then we did see bishop to C2, and their game continued after that. So this position is not completely foreign to these players right here, but we do see the move B5. We see the move H3, always creating luft. It's never a bad idea. We do see knight going to H7. We got bishop to E3. We see H5. We got a rook going over to E1. King side stepping over to H8. We got the move D4. So you see we kind of prepared D4 instead of going outright with it. We see the knight now going to A5, which you see is a really common idea. And then the bishop does come back to C2. And like I said earlier, some of you guys probably sitting there thinking, wait a minute, okay, so I went back to B3, like, but then I ultimately went to C2. Like, why would I make both of those moves instead of just going to C2 directly? Well, like I said, it's a very deep understanding reason as to why. Now, you guys have seen me do King's Indian. I literally just did one, I think, a video or two ago. And one of the major ideas in the King's Indian, or possibly not really too much in the Dragons, it's mostly in a King's Indian type situation, is you have this knight on F6. You want to move it somewhere so that you can push the move F5, right? So that is one of your main ideas. So going back to what we had, like I said, we had bishop to D7, and then we saw bishop down to B3. Now, Atousa, understanding that Carissa Yip is probably trying to go for this idea, which Carissa Yip did say she was trying to go there, is to prevent that pawn push. So you see, going through these moves, we do see the King's Indian type of setup coming up. And then after knight to G3, castles. You see, like I mentioned before, king to H8. Now, it's making it really, really hard because now the pawn is pinned. So what Atousa was trying to do is fight against this King's Indian idea. So you see, after we had some more moves, we had this, and then we had the king side stepping over. So White successfully basically prevented the liberating pawn push to F5. So, I mean, even though it kind of seemed like you're wasting a tempo, it had a very, very good idea behind it. So getting to where we are in the game, the bishop did come down to C2. Now, I mean, it's generally where you do kind of want to preserve your bishops, even if the position is somewhat closed, because maybe the position can become open at some point. So we do see Black going after White's bishops, and White basically saying, I don't want to have any part in this. So we do see the knight going back to B6 after bishop to C1. We see the move B3. We're just restricting the knight here, and we're also restricting the knight. We're also making it possible, possibly, for the bishop to come here, because since this king is now on a dark square, this is a really, really good diagonal to try to take over. So that's an idea as well. Bishop goes to C6, always constantly trying to attack this E4 pawn. It is very, very good to try to attack that as Black. So we do see the move A4. Bishop drops back to B7. We got the move A5. Knight goes back to D7. You didn't have a whole lot of choices. I mean, you have C8 or D7. D7 is more active. We got the move B4. We got queen down to E7. Queen goes to E2. Rook goes to E8. And, I mean, the crazy thing is both of these players are keeping the tension for like a million years. You see that these two pawns have been kind of hanging out with each other diagonally for probably about half the game at this point. Neither side really wants to break the tension. So that is what you see in some of these high-level games where they're just like, hey, man, I'm just going to just keep everything. So we do see the move D5, closing the stuff down. So as of right now, you have this bishop is kind of closed, and you have this bishop that's kind of closed. So Black definitely needs a pawn break, and that is immediately what Carissa Yip does. Go C6. You want to try to demolish the structure so that your bishops can get free. So we do see C4, attempting to try to continue to keep it closed. So pawn takes, and then pawn takes, and so you are shutting this light square bishop out on the Black side. And like I said, this idea never left, even though you kind of had to do some preparation with moving the knight and king to H8 and, you know, stuff like that. This is definitely the pawn break that you want, owing to, you know, King's Indian types of setups. So we do see pawn taking F5, and then we do see the move H4. And we have actually reached a point in the game. This was the thumbnail that I had on the video. We have actually reached a point in the game that White has a very, very active move that they can make right here. So if you want to pause the video and try to guess that active move, go ahead and do so. Okay, so what we actually saw in the game, and this was not the move, is knight back to F1. Now, it's not like the worst move ever, but it is a very passive move. You really don't kind of want your knight on F1. It was really, really greatly positioned on G3. And you really kind of want to move it more towards the center or to the opponent's side. So you actually, in this position, had the move F6. Now, what F6 does is it basically makes it to where if G was to take F5, you are not worried about your knight getting pushed away from the square that you really, really want to put it on. After bishop takes F6, you would have the move knight to E4. And as you guys can see, this is a much stronger square for the knight to be on. You are attacking this backward pawn. You're also attacking the bishop, and you have better prospects for your knight coming up. If you can go something like this and like this, I mean, you're living a pretty good life. So if you did guess F6, you're a gangster. But like I said, we did see knight going to f1 in the game. We have the move e4. So, I mean, you are pinned as black, but you are kind of getting a little bit of, you know, pushing going on, going towards the white side. We do see pawn taking g6 because, like I said, the e-pawn is pinned. You're going to be dropping the queen and a rook if you move that pawn out of the way. We do see bishop taking a1. And this is actually, like, suggested. This is actually a computer way to play the position. We do see pawn taking h7, bishop taking d5. We see bishop going to g5, bishop going back to f6. And then we have a very, very sneaky knight takes h4. And it might kind of seem weird because you're like, wait a minute, like I'm just dropping my bishop, right? Well, actually, no. Because if black gets too hungry and takes here, you do have knight to g6 check. And you got the queen and the king looking pretty suspect. So after knight takes h4, we do see they very correct, or one of the more correct. Queen takes h7. We see queen going to d2. You know, double attacking, or not double attacking, single attacking this and covering bishop g5 at the same time. We do see bishop going back to b7. We got knight up to g3. We got rook over to g8. And now something has to give. So we got bishop taking f6 with check. The king, the knight taking on f6. We have a knight h to f5. You definitely don't want to leave the knight on the rim because it's grim. We do see the move d5. We got queen up to d4. Pin it and win it. Pin that knight down. We see a rook going to e6. Bishop going to b3. This is obviously like a point that white wants to try to hit because it is backwards and it's blockaded. So, you know, you try to load up on it, right? We do see the rook going to g5, and we have actually reached a point in the game that there is another guess the move portion. There's a specific reason why this move is like the most powerful move in the position. If you want to pause the video and see what killer blow white has right here, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So it might be a little bit difficult to find because it seems like this point is very heavily defended. But the move is actually rook takes e4. And I think some of you guys are like, what? Like, why would I take? Because the rook can take and then all of this other stuff. Well, the problem is the king is actually very, very cut off in this situation. So if this pawn moves, not only are you just dropping the rook, but you do have some queen d8 ideas, and you are looking kind of suspect over here. But if we did see this, you would just be literally winning, you know, a pawn, and you would be taking the rook, getting your exchange back. And so everything is kind of centered around the fact that this rook is hanging. One of the alternatives is for the rook to actually take here, but you are dropping the knight. So you can see that these pieces for black in the center of the board are just a little bit loose. So you definitely don't want to go down this path. So if you found rook takes e4, I don't even know, man. Like, you just like on some crazy level, dude. So like I said, rook went to g5, but white did not actually find this. They went queen to a7, which is not a bad move, but you can see the bar like is like, bro, why didn't you just take the win? I mean, it happens. These players are getting a little bit low on time at this point. So we do see the rook going over to c6. We see queen going to b8 with check. The rook steps up, so now you have to save the queen. Queen goes to e5. We see queen over to c7. You know, black would definitely like to trade pieces right here, being up the exchange. It is a pretty favorable endgame to have. The queen maintains the pin and goes down to d4. The rook goes over to d8. We see knight up to h5. Just, you know, adding more and more pressure to this pin. The queen goes over to f7, literally one of the only moves. And then we do see the move g4. I mean, we're looking at possible this after the knight moves. So you kind of have to do something, homie. So king goes to h7. As you guys saw, you know, you were literally in a bad pin on that diagonal, so you had to get away from it. We do see knight h going down to g3. Of course, you cannot push g4 and drop your knight over there on h4. So we do see bishop to c8. We got queen down to d2. Tickling this square. Like, hey, what do you want to do, bro? You want to get mated? So the queen goes up to f8, just simply defending. We got queen infiltrating into g5. We see king up to h8. We got knight down to d4. The rook goes up to c7. We see knight g to f5. We got bishop taking f5, queen taking f5. And I mean, the one thing I'll say about the game is it has been in white's favor for quite a while. It's just Atousa is not really kind of finding like the killer blow in these positions. So she's really kind of letting Carissa Yip back in the game. And I mean, Carissa Yip is playing pretty resourcefully. you know, defending pretty well. So we do see rook going over to f7. We see knight going to e6. And this is actually pretty much a killer blow. But obviously, as you guys know, when you play your games and stuff, you know, you can find the greatest moves. But if you don't know the follow-ups, if you're not playing strong after that, you definitely can give your opponent a chance to claw back into the game. So queen does take b4 here, just saying, hey, man, you can get your exchange back if you want to. And that's exactly what white really needed to do. Instead, they go rook to e3, which basically makes it pretty dead even. But if we look at what the absolute best in this position is, it was actually knight takes d8. And I know what you guys are thinking. Why would I hang my rook on e1? I mean, it's really not hanging your rook. You have to allow this stuff to happen. But, I mean, this is really computer play, homie. Queen takes e1 with check, so you have to allow this variation. You know, king going to g2, and then the rook going up to f8, knight back down to e6, rook back to f7, the knight goes back to g5, rook goes to f8, and then the queen is infiltrating up here in this position here. And I mean, it is literally mating for white, but it really doesn't probably seem like it. It just seems like you're doing pretty good. You got an exchange as black. I mean, you even, well, no, you don't have any pawns. It's about the same. But anyways, very logical with a minute, you know, 45 seconds left to just play rook to e3. Make sure the bishop is protected and everything and be good. So the rook D goes down to d7. We see the move g5, getting ever closer to, you know, doing some damage with this pawn up here. So we do see the move knight back to e8. And then we have queen e5. So, I mean, it's crazy how close Atousa was in this game to literally just like being one move away from just putting the whole game away. And Carissa is really surviving, homie. So we do see the knight coming back to g7. And we do see queen going to b8 with check. Now, the absolute top move in the position, it was like I said, every time she's making moves, she's putting a lot of pressure. There's like key moves that she has to find that she's just not able to find. Rook to c3 was the actual move. And it puts you in a really, really serious pickle. You are trying to infiltrate, you know, obviously take over this entire file with the rook, right? So it seems automatic, but I mean, with very little time on your clock, it's pretty tough to find this stuff, man. So, like I said, we got queen to e5, the knight blocks, and then we have queen to b8 with check. We got king coming down to h7. We got the move g6, but the problem in the situation is this is like basically getting super dead even. We do see king taking g6, and then we got rook to g3 with check. But even though it seems like, man, this king is super open, there really isn't a good mate here. We got the king going over to f6. We got knight down to g5. And I mean, it's still pretty even though white is down a pawn and in exchange. But I mean, they're surviving in this position. We do see the knight going to f5, and then we actually see a game-losing blunder by Atousa. And, I mean, she got like 30 seconds left. Both players have like 30, 45 seconds left, and they're really living off of that. She goes knight to h7 with check. And it just literally throws the knight away. I'm not sure what she saw. I tried to find like the interview on it. But, I mean, they didn't interview her after the game, so I don't know, you know, what she was really thinking. The only thing that they were talking about that's a possibility maybe is that, I mean, right now there's a possibility of the queen going to h8, and that is really kind of like a mating situation. So she might have been trying to clear the knight out of the way with this maneuver. But the problem is once rook takes h7 like they did, now there is no queen to h8, and you're not in any type of, you know, mating net or anything like that. So it was just one of those really, you know, kind of like, you know, momentary oversights. But this is how the game ended up. Rook takes h7. We see the queen coming down to f4. Rook goes to h7 because black would love to trade. Bishop taking d5. Rook taking g3. And it is in this position that Atousa resigns the game. So Carissa got really lucky on this one, man, because Atousa was playing like a really, really crazy bomb game. But there were just those moves that she just couldn't quite find. So it's crazy, man. But I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat. Hailey mamnoon. Appreciate the request. And I'm going to holler at you guys next time.